Hey guys, it's Kevin in the mirror for you guys. I'm reviewing this movie that I was very much looking forward to seeing. In fact, it's really the only movie that came out this week that I was actually very interested in, and that is none other than Steven Soderbergh's new film, Unsane. Now, given the nature of this movie, it's a little bit hard to get into the plot without talking about spoilers, but without really saying too much, we focus on this character, Sawyer Valentini, and basically she is this woman who, after signing a few papers for what she thought was going to be the support group, she actually checks herself into this mental institution, and she's basically forced against her will to stay there, and along the way, certain parts of her past start to creep in, and she starts to get the sense that there may be a deliberate reason why she's here, and it's not, purely coincidental, and that someone clearly put her here for a specific reason, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Unsane in general, I was really interested in this movie, to be honest with you. I thought that this had a lot of potential for sure. Steven Soderbergh is a director that I think for the past few years, he's kind of been in and out when it comes to, what he's been doing. It's clear he's trying to reinvent himself. He said that he wasn't going to do movies for a while. He was going to retire from it, do more TV stuff. Now it's like the other way around. And it really seemed like Unsane was sort of the film where he was going to reinvent himself with. But here's the thing. He's always been an experimental director. So him shooting this movie on an iPhone doesn't necessarily surprise me. We'll get to that a little bit later, but that aside, I thought this movie had a lot of potential for sure. You had a lot of really great talent throughout this film, and I'm happy to say that Unsane is fantastic. I really did love this movie. It does have a few problems here and there. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but it definitely is a very well put together film that is very unnerving and creepy, and we're getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And right off the bat, that is definitely one of the best things about this movie. Most of the actors in this movie are very well cast. I think, honestly, mostly everyone did. Now, I'm saying mostly because there definitely are some that weren't that great. But for the most part, I think everyone did a really good job. Let's first talk about Claire Foy as our main character here, who is fantastic in this role. Now, I'll say it right now. Does her accent go in and out throughout this movie? Yes, there are many points where you may hear a little bit of British creep in there and you're like, where did that come from? That wasn't there before. But honestly, Foy is such a dynamic and talented actress that I can really get behind that. I don't really care that her accent goes in and out throughout this movie because she's just so damn good in this role. What I really love about Sawyer is how rational she tries to be within this institution. I mean, the second she's in there, you can tell that she really is freaking out, but obviously she does her best to repress it. She doesn't want to show that, she is freaking out, but as the movie goes on, she definitely does get more and more manic, especially once we get an idea of what's actually going on, and I think Foy just did a really great job there. She has to project so much emotion and anxiety, and she really did pull it off, I have to say. I think she did an incredible job throughout this movie. She continues to show why she is such a fantastic actress. I haven't really watched a lot of The Crown, but you can definitely tell why she has gotten the acclaim she has for that show because she really is fantastic here. Scenes where she's freaking out, you're freaking out. Scenes where she's kind of calm, you're calm. You really want her to get out of this situation. There are points where she isn't necessarily a likable character, but Foy does enough to keep you invested in the role, and I think she just did an incredible job throughout this movie, and again, continues to show why she is easily one of the best actresses working today. She was fantastic here. Now, the other actor I really do want to talk about is Joshua Leonard, as this character of, this character in the movie. Now, I can't say too much about him because that would delve into spoiler territory. All I will say is that he does a really great job at playing one of the wardens at the institution. the second you see him, there's just something off about this guy. You don't exactly know what it is, but, you know, especially once Foy starts to get into what really has happened to her, you really do start to feel, you know, you really do start to feel that there's something really bad about this guy, and that this guy definitely should not be here, and he might have some sort of, you know, more maniacal intent. And I think he did a really great job in this movie. It never really came across as too hammy or over the top. I think honestly he did a really great job, especially in the third act of this movie. Holy shit, he really did a great job. And some of the best scenes are just between him and Claire Foy. You know, I think they both did a really great job here. And he, once again, without getting into spoilers, once again, he was very good here. Who really surprised me in this movie, though, is Jay Pharoah as the character of Nate Hoffman. This guy is a revelation in this movie. I mean, obviously, I've heard of Jay Pharoah before from Saturday Night Live and that show he did on Showtime, which I never got a chance to watch. But from what I've seen, he's definitely really good at impressions. But this film really does show the talent that he truly does have. Because, sure, he does have some comedic moments in this movie, but for the most part, he is taking this role seriously, and I really did love that. And actually, he is one of my favorite parts of this movie. He's someone who, the second he meets Sawyer, he really does believe her, and he wants to do what he can, you know, to get her out of there. And you can see this friendship that the two do strike up. There's something really endearing about it, and he just does a really great job as the heart of the movie. He's very rootable, and I thought he definitely was one of the best parts of this film for sure. And that's something I definitely was not expecting to say, but Pharoah kind of blew me away a little bit. He really was great here. And then the rest of the cast, I thought overall did a really good job. Juno Temple, once again, does a pretty good job in this movie as this character of Violet. She is this very volatile, very insane patient who constantly is going after Claire Foy, you know, with like sharp objects and things like that. But she did a really good job here. I really loved Aimee Irving in this movie. I thought she was fantastic as Sawyer's mom. She's not in the movie a lot, but she has a few scenes, and she really did a great job. I will say the actors that play the wardens in the movie, besides Joshua Leonard, are not that great. Like Aimee Mullins, for example, I did not think really was all that great. I thought the other warden in the movie, you know, the one who tells her, like, strip down to her underwear, she really wasn't too good either. But I do think that most of the cast here did generate a really good performance, and I think overall, for the most part, they were well casted here overall. But now let's get to what I really want to talk about, the directing and the writing, which this should be no surprise. Steven Soderbergh's directing is fantastic here. Now, I will say, the trailer for this movie is a bit misleading. You might go into this movie thinking it's going to be a straight-up horror movie, and without really getting into it, that's not really what this is. I mean, sure, there are horror elements in here, but the film really is an amalgamation of many things. To its core, though, I think this is basically a psychological thriller with some horror elements in there. I mean, this really is a very unnerving, very creepy film. And what I really love about Soderbergh, and this is something I've loved about all his stuff, is how good he is at building tension. He is so careful with what he does, and with this film in particular, he just does such a great job of generating this tension throughout the film, and you really don't know where it's going to go. And I thought that tone was just so well realized here. It's so suspenseful, it's so creepy, but it never feels over the top. It never feels unrealistic. It actually did feel very real and in the moment, and I think his directing was really spot on. Those moments of levity do largely come from Pharoah, and they're actually done quite well, because again, they don't feel like the comedy is just here because, oh, now you're supposed to laugh. It feels natural, you know, it's not always going to be suspenseful. It's not always going to be filled with tension. There are going to be some nice moments in there, and I thought those were executed pretty well too, and I was overall very impressed when it came to the directing. But now let's talk about the writing, because the writing is something else I was very impressed by. Again, I can't get too into it because there are a lot of spoilers in this movie that I am going to talk about eventually, but right now I just can't say too much about it. What I will say is that the writing here is incredibly well done. What I really loved about this movie is what it really has to say about someone who is in a mental institution. I mean, we start off with Sawyer, and you can tell that there's definitely a sense that she might not, she should not be here. But then there are parts of the movie where you're like, wait, is she crazy? Is she not crazy? I mean, you really don't know throughout this movie if she's supposed to be here or not. And I think they did a really good job at laying it out and kind of confusing us in that sense. And some people have complained that the movie is a bit confused as to what it wants to be. And I would disagree. I think predominantly what this movie is really all about is, how shady mental institutions really can be and how they're not always, as good-natured as they tend to be. And I do think that is overall very interesting, but it also is a film about abuse and overcoming that abuse and, sort of the state of someone who isn't crazy starting to kind of think that maybe they are crazy. And I thought all that stuff was just really interesting. It's very well written in that sense. And again, it feels very realistic. It doesn't feel overdone. It feels like if someone were in this situation, this is most likely how it would play out. And I was definitely very impressed when it came to the writing. I really did love the way it was done. I also love how patient this movie really is. It really does take its time for things to really get crazy. I mean, obviously she's thrown in there and she doesn't know what the hell's going on. Why am I here? What's going on? But it never really feels like it's happening too fast. It does feel quite natural. And I was overall very, I just felt very impressed when it came to the writing, and it did feel very real to me in that sense. There was a very palpable sense of tension throughout this movie that I thought was just very well exhibited in the writing. That was something I was definitely very impressed by. And like I said, Pharoah, once again, I really did love the relationship that these two do start up, because he really is one of the only sources of, someone who does believe her. Everyone else pretty much just thinks that she's crazy, because why else would she be in the mental institution? I mean, that's why people are in a mental institution, right? Because they're crazy? Well, that might not be the case, and that's something that his character really does represent. He starts to kind of think that maybe there is a bigger intent, and that maybe the institution itself is keeping her here for ulterior motives that may or may not benefit her. And I did think that was overall very interesting. What Soderbergh has to say about institutions are stuff that I don't really think about, but it does make a lot of sense. And I love how he didn't hold back. There's a lot of stuff here that, yes, it is hard to watch, but that is, mainly what does go down on mental institutions. And I like that he didn't try to, dramatize it. He didn't try to shy away from this stuff, and that's something I've always loved about Soderbergh. He really does get into the nitty-gritty of what a certain experience does to you, and in the case of this film, it is, of course, what being in a mental institution and the just very nefarious acts that do, in fact, go down there, and I thought that was very well done. The cinematography here, of course, one of the big things of this movie is the fact that it was all shot on an iPhone. Is it necessary? Does it work here? And I will say, yes, it was absolutely necessary. And some people might watch this movie and be like, why was it shot on an iPhone? What is really the point of that? To me, I don't think we should look at this and be like, oh, this is cheapening, what Hollywood movies are supposed to do. This doesn't look like a Hollywood film. Because to me, I think the main reason Soderbergh shot the movie on an iPhone was to give us this sense of realism, give us this sense of claustrophobia. I mean, by being on this iPhone, he can get really deep into an angle. Sure, you can do that on a camera, but there are certain lenses and certain color palettes and things like that you don't really have on a traditional movie camera. And I thought it was honestly really cool the way this was done. It really gives you this sense of claustrophobia, like you're kind of trapped there. But it also feels very personal, like you're seeing this through the lens of Sawyer's phone, and you're seeing specifically what she went through. It almost at points does feel like a video someone would make if they really needed help. And, know, like maybe you see it on like the news or something, you see like exactly what they're going through. It does feel very real in that sense. It felt a bit found footage at points, but not in the sense where it's like, oh, can you believe this happened? No, it just feels like this is an actual event that took place. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Soderbergh based this off of true events that he has heard. I don't know if that's actually the case, but it very much did feel that way certain points in the movie, and I was actually very impressed by that. I thought the cinematography, again, really just added to the very maniacal and just very unnerving feeling throughout the film. I thought it really did enhance that. The score I really did love. Again, very creepy, very Hitchcockian-esque, I must say, and I really did love the score of this movie. And then the editing. I will say I do think the editing, it took me a little while to fully get into the film. I definitely will say that. But once she is checked into that mental institution and they tell her to strip down and she's, thrown into that setting, I pretty much was into it from there, and I was locked in after that. Really, my only other complaint I would have with the film is I do think there is one character in the movie that the film really does underuse, and that's Juno Temple's character. I think, she starts off and you think she's going to do something, but they don't really do a lot with her. Yes, she is very important in the movie. It's not like she's not, but I thought they could have done more with her character overall, and they just really didn't. Also, the ending of the movie, while well done, I don't know if it 100% makes sense. I really don't. And I do think that maybe I'd have to rewatch the movie again to really understand what the ending means. I do think I have an idea of what the ending means, but I definitely did enjoy the ending overall. It was very ballsy. It was very well done. And again, it just went to that realism that I think the movie was really trying to get into here. But with all that said, let me now get into spoilers, because with this film, it's kind of hard to talk about without really diving into that. Obviously, I want to talk about what this movie is really about, because the trailer leads you to believe that it's a movie about her being trapped in this mental institution, and if she's crazy or not, and I think the film very deliberately tells you that, no, she's not crazy. Even Soderbergh said that she's not crazy. He just shot it on an iPhone deliberately to kind of confuse us. That was the main reason why he did do that. What the movie is really about is, Sawyer kind of coming to terms with this stalker and, the trauma and the effects of what that has really done to her. And that storyline I did find to be very interesting. The whole thing with her and this guy who, kind of out of just simply happenstance, he started to stalk her. This wasn't someone that she really communicated with. It was just she simply took care of his father because, she taught his father how to read. He was dying, and he said nothing to him, and, they connected at the funeral, and since then, he's pretty much been obsessed with her. And I think Leonard, again, he did a really great job at playing someone who definitely is crazy, but he didn't do it in a cartoony sense. You could see why he cares so much for Sawyer. And there's a lot of things that Sawyer does bring up that I very much do agree with. I mean, we're all questioning, why does he care about this girl so much? What is it about her that is so attractive? What is it about her that he really does love? And that's something that Sawyer, directly does ask him towards the end of the movie. She says, the only reason, you're never going to know if you actually love me because you've never experienced, any other girls before. You've never had sex. You've never had a relationship. And I did find that to be very interesting. You can tell this is someone who is just a very lost soul who turned to Sawyer, and I really love getting into that story of Sawyer and David. I mean, this guy is crazy, like, definitely. I'm not minimizing at all what he did. I mean, he literally stole someone's identity by murdering them. He practically, killed Jay Pharoah's character by castrating him. He, killed her mother. I mean, this guy has done some really fucked up things, but when it does come down to it, you can see that he really is a lost soul, and that he came to her simply for that connection, and it was so strong that he just didn't want to lose it. And I thought that was a very well done narrative. The fact that that she clearly is creeped out. You can tell that there is a bit of a sense that she does care for him, just a little bit, but obviously she wants to get out of there, and you want her to get out of there as well. You know, what he's doing to her is just so messed up. So when we eventually get to the point where she tells him to have sex with Violet, I knew very well that's not where the movie was going. I knew there was no way we were going to get this thing where he was actually going to have sex with her in front of, in front of Sawyer. There was just no way the film was going to go there. There was clearly something else on her mind, and I love the way this is done because, of course, you know, up to this point, I didn't really feel much for Violet. I thought that she was just kind of an annoying ancillary character that didn't really have much of a purpose other than it's Juno Temple, and that's the only reason she's credited as starring. But then this scene, now I understand why she was so important, because of course, the first scene we're introduced to her, we realize that she has that shiv, and you know that shiv is going to serve a purpose eventually. That's something that Soderbergh does very well. He does such a great job of setting up these things that are seemingly so random and don't really serve any purpose, but in the end it actually does. It makes sense why she wanted Violet, because Violet's the person that has the shiv. This is her way of, you know, being able to cut his throat, so that way, you know, she will finally be able to get out of there. Obviously, he does come back for her, and that's something I love. The movie took this in a very realistic sense. Like, she's not just gonna get out of there and he's gonna, this is gonna slow him down, you know. No, he's going to do everything he can to go after her. He's so desperate, he literally kidnaps her, you know, he thinks he chloroforms her, you know, he breaks her ankle with that hammer, but she's still not done. She's going to make sure that she, you know, gets what she wants from him, and, you know, that she finally, gets her revenge and gets out of there. And it's a very well done sequence when she does get away from him and you think that it's over. But then, of course, we cut to the 6 months later, and at first, I did not really like this ending, where we see that she thinks she sees him in the restaurant, and it turns out it's not him. At first, what I was thinking is that, oh, are they trying to say that she's actually been crazy this entire time? Is that really what's going on? But when I really think about it, I think what they're trying to say with this ending, and I could be wrong, but I think what Soderbergh is trying to say is that through this whole experience of being in this institution, you know, being so closed off, so secluded from everyone else, you know, being in that solitary confinement, everything that David said to her, it has messed her up so much where she basically has become crazy. She's never going to fully get over what David did to her. That's always going to be in the back of her mind, and she's always going to have the worry and the paranoia that he is going to come back for her, even though he is in fact dead. I mean, we saw her, she killed him. Like, he's gone. There's no coming back from what she did to him. I don't think the movie's trying to say he's still out there. I think it's trying to say through her experience, she actually has become crazy. And I think when you look at it from that lens, it actually does make a lot of sense. And that's something that I definitely really did enjoy seeing. I think it is a very well done ending in that sense. But again, that's my way of interpreting. I don't know if it 100% makes sense. I'd have to rewatch the movie. But I do think it is a very daring, and I think, again, it's very realistic. I mean, when someone, just because you have taken down your abuser or the person that has violated you, I mean, even though he didn't really do anything to her, like there was never rape or anything like that, she felt very unnerved, and there were a lot of things that he did that very much did violate her. I mean, he killed her mother, you know, he killed someone that could have been her only source of getting out of there, of course, that being Pharoah, who, I forgot to get into the fact that he actually is a reporter, which I thought that was actually really cool as well, the way that even in his death, he was able to expose the institution for what they was. I mean, they were a very sleazy, just a very shady business. I mean, they were doing things that were completely illegal, and I was very happy to see them get shut down. I really love the way that was done. But again, you know, even though she has done all of that, that doesn't mean that she is ever going to be completely over this, and that's something that I just really did enjoy seeing. I think it is a very well done ending in that regard, and even though some of it is still a bit confusing, I do think that ending on its own is very powerful. It has a lot to say about people who do go through this psychological abuse, and again, I think Claire Foy just absolutely nailed it in that last scene. Honestly, she nailed throughout the entire movie, but I just just really love the way that ended, and I honestly don't think it, I think it definitely was just really going with that realistic sense that Soderbergh was trying to capture throughout the entire film. Overall, guys, Unsane is a fantastic movie. It is definitely the film that shows that Soderbergh definitely isn't going anywhere. He still is the mastermind that we've all known him as. Sure, it does have some characters that are a bit underwritten. Sure, it does have some things that I think could have been done just a little bit better. But overall, I really did love Unsane. I think it is a very unnerving, very creepy take on, abuse and, the corruption of institutions, all that kind of stuff. I think it is very well presented here. It's not for everyone. I can totally see if someone doesn't like this movie. Believe me, I can. But for me, it just very well connected with me. I thought it was very well handled. And I'm definitely going to give Unsane overall an A-. But overall, guys, my review of Unsane. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie. All loved your thoughts in it. Definitely check out this movie for sure. I think, again, it's not a movie I think everyone's going to love, but it really does show how daring of a director Soderbergh is, and definitely I think this film in general really does show that he definitely does still have it. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.